Welcome to NFT Tokenomics Office Hours, Episode 2. My name is Nicholas. Office Hours is a new show that gives NFT and DAO creators a creative and critically constructive environment for workshopping their project's tokenomics. My co-host Jango and I are here to help people with a project, a community, or just an idea to refine their sense of who their audience is, what they're uniquely well positioned to monetize, and how to go to market. On this week's episode, we're joined by 3 guests. Jin, or DangerZone, joins us to discuss monetizing his Openvoxels metaverse archival work through art. Ibn Inglor speaks with us about his NFT music practice and burgeoning DAO, DangerZone. Finally, we're joined by Rob and Nagpal to discuss DoDAO, a service DAO aiming to organize contributors with Juicebox tokenomics. If you have feedback, please send me a DM on Twitter at Nicholas with 4 leading N's, or drop into the Juicebox Discord at discord.gg/juicebox. Start a thread for your project in the Project Creators channel, or join the Office Hours thread for a discussion of this show in particular. If you'd like to discuss your project with us on air, please drop into the live recording each Wednesday at 4:20 p.m. Eastern Time, 21:20 UTC. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Welcome to Office Hours, everybody. Welcome, Ibn and Jin. Nice to see you.
Howdy.
Hey.
So Jin popped in first, if I recall. So I guess we might as well start with Jin. For anybody who's new to the show, this is the second episode, and basically the purpose of this is to help workshop with project creators, NFT tokenomics, membership tokenomics, and anything related to creating projects that are able to achieve the goals that the creators have in mind. So it's kind of an open forum. Anybody can drop in. And today we have 2 guests who asked to be on last episode, and there wasn't time. So, Jin, you want to talk about Openvoxels, right?
Yeah. So Openvoxels kind of began over a lot of experiments over the years. Ever since discovering CryptoVoxels in 2018, I've been doing interop experiments, and most of it's all pro bono, and it's documented on the link that is on the Juicebox page and on the Twitter. You can kind of browse that, but I want to make it more of a sustainable, like DeSci lab and a data DAO that stewards these snapshots of wearables and parcels, kind of like an Internet Archive service, but eventually kind of like Internet Archive meets Google Earth, so that we could go through time at these different periods of history of as the cities, because it's constantly changing, so every time someone edits it, you can't time travel and kind of see what CryptoVoxels looked like a year ago or whatever. So, I want to create a Wayback Machine for the metaverse and make that a sustainable thing. And I've been experimenting with Juicebox V3 this cycle by minting some posters of showcasing the interop thing, but the next thing I want to explore is a burn mechanic of maybe the Openvoxels tokens can be used to redeem generative art. And I posted an example of this in the latest Openvoxels tweet, which based on a parcel number. So if this, say like a supporter has their own parcels, we could generate some really cool kind of like neon glitchy aesthetic art out of that. And with the 3D files, I also want to set up artist grants for people to make art about with these assets about Metaverse Interop and propagate those.
Before we go too far, I forgot to mention that you made the great suggestion that we hang out in the Juicebox Learning Center in CryptoVoxels while we chat about this. So if folks want to go to...
I'm there right now, yeah.
Yeah, I just popped in. juicebox.lexicondevils.xyz. Maybe someone can post a link, but juicebox.lexicondevils.xyz, you can pop into the space. And if you have a wallet, a browser with a wallet, you can connect and people will see who you are. So we're going to be hanging out in there while we talk about voxels.
So let me kind of reflect what you just said. So every time someone contributes to the Openvoxels project, in this cycle, you get an NFT, or you have the option to get an NFT depending on how much you contribute. And then you also get some project tokens, which are commensurate to the amount of ETH contributed to the project. And what you're thinking about doing is using the project token in another contract to
one or the other. It could be the
Yeah.
NFT as well. I'm not quite sure which one would work best, but yeah.
Gotcha. Well, if you do the NFT, then the person who got it doesn't have it anymore in their wallet, and maybe the fungible token is a little less interesting, and maybe depending on what you're using for, maybe even pointless at this point. So maybe you can add utility and some incentive by kind of adding some componentry that you can some art component you can add using that project token. Is that correct?
Yeah, with the project token, I've got a snapshot page set up, and I'm thinking maybe it could be used for curating what the next thing to archive might be, perhaps. So we want to use some of the funds for file storage like Filecoin or Arweave to put these snapshots, on the permaweb. And we also, with the project token, I was thinking that could be useful for the governance, but also, I'm not quite sure. This is where I could use some feedback.
Yeah, I don't know if we've seen folks leverage project tokens in other contracts outside of the JB ecosystem yet. So this would definitely be a cool idea of how to extend and add incentive to contribute to the treasury.
And I do know that it's not going to be limited to just CryptoVoxels. So we took a snapshot of all the parcels last month and a chunk of the wearables. I found out there's like a bunch more wearables contracts that we didn't scrape, but we also archived or downloaded or shall I say backed up sandbox game assets. So all the GLTFs from the sandbox game, and that could be really useful for interop working groups, kind of like what OMA 3 came out swinging last summer to kind of like build this open metaverse alliance and form working groups to work on interoperable standards and stuff. And I kind of want Openvoxels to be more about like we're, walking the walk type of vibe, doing all this kind of public research, creating kind of like a public DeSci lab that folks can come and collaborate, and there's bounties for things on DWork and stuff.
Cool.
And we're working on Decentraland next too.
Okay, so basically, Openvoxels is doing this archival work, cross metaverse archival work. The audience is like folks from M3, like a metaverse community. Well, I guess that's sort of who benefits from this. The treasury's built to give grants to people to do the archiving work who are typically part of M3 Collective.
Yep.
And who is the audience for this activity? Have you found that there are people outside of M3 who are interested in supporting this work? I think did Ben from CryptoVoxels chip into the treasury previously?
He did with the meme number contributions, but I want to kind of have a wider audience through creating really dope art that utilizes like a bunch of crossover assets, like when you look at some of these Fortnite cutscenes and whatnot, you can see all this crossover IP, it's like, whoa, crossovers is metaverse-y. And I really loved, Webverse using a lot of crossovers in the art and posters and stuff like that. And I want assets that artists can use to create that kind of content. But right now we're, just grabbing parcels and assets that could be really useful in 3D art pipelines to do that. And then that art, would find a wider audience to kind of support the cause with.
So I guess the first group of people who would understand that would be people who would be doing that remixing work and maybe selling their own creations on the basis of some of the archiving you've done?
Yeah. Collaborating with some artists. We're already starting to do that, just and kind of like, hey, use some of these assets and this pipeline you're working on and see how it looks. And it's, so we're kind of experimenting with that.
And do you have to worry about like permission to reuse that stuff, or is it fair game?
We're using everything that we own so far. So it's like my parcels, for example.
Okay, I see. And then, so the idea is you are selling artworks in collaboration with artists. who are benefiting from the archival work as source material and art supplies for their own derivative works and remixes and new ideas. And then the sale of those things feeds back to support the archival work that generates those art supplies.
Yeah, and I was thinking with Juicebox, maybe you at certain thresholds can have an NFT that acts as a voucher for an art piece that gets created specially for, some of your assets that you help provide, or something that we create if nothing was specified. But what do you think of that concept? The NFT being something of which it's kind of like a 1155 burnable type of thing that could be redeemed for art.
Take me through what this would feel like as a buyer or as a participant in the Openvoxels project.
Okay, so let's say there's different tiers. Like the first tier is like this really cool cyberpunk aesthetic sort of looping GIF that I posted in Openvoxels Twitter.
Yeah,
and then so let's say you're a parcel owner and you really love this concept and you have some parcels and you want something unique, like that's your parcel or something archived in that point in time as this cool art piece. So kind of tiers like that, and then maybe some higher tiers could be like a custom virtual world made with your wearables or parcel or whatever asset that is in a data set.
I see. Okay, so this sci-fi anime style GIF is made on the basis of a scan of or an archive of a plot in CryptoVoxels. And so you'd be selling like almost blanks, and then the metadata would be updated with a work inspired or using the plot of the person who purchased it.
Or airdropped, this really cool derivative art piece. So we do want to mint things like GLTF files, for example, of the parcels, but right now it's just the cubes only, not all the details and such. But it would be really cool to be able to, and this is kind of the vision for Openvoxels in terms of the interface, where you can choose to kind of mint your parcel to as a snapshot in time. So like a snapshot of your parcel as a GLTF file. And then that makes it more interoperable with other verses, because right now it's just like this proprietary JSON scheme that nothing else really reads. And if we just kind of convert it to GLTF, then it's immediately usable. Like all the CryptoVoxel wearables that we converted are now usable in Decentraland, for example. They could be linked wearables. So I'm just kind of thinking for the goods, that the rewards could be kind of like a Metaverse Midas touch sort of like restaurant, where like you pick your ingredient that we sizzle up and cook, a special, unique thing for you.
Because basically you've got the full snapshot, or you're going to have to go do a new archival work to...
we would do it on a snapshot to kind of celebrate these epochs.
So two things. One, this reminds me a little bit, we're in this Juicebox parcel, and every month there's this forming concert, and the Lexicon Devils voxel architecture firm throw this concert, and every time they remake huge parts of the parcel. So something does click with me here about people who are addicted to architecting in CryptoVoxels or in other metaverse spaces would want like snapshots to represent the points in time where they had major chapters of the evolution of their parcels. That makes a lot of sense to me.
You're right. Yeah, I take it back. I would totally be down for, whatever snapshot is provided. For over a year now, there's been daily backups uploaded to Arweave. So we have like the whole, grid space basically backed up for that amount of time, and people can also download the JSON for their parcel anytime. The website allows you to just download it. And
what website is that?
Voxels.com. So on your parcel.
Oh, okay, on your parcel. So you'd have to do it on you're the ones who have this latent wayback machine from the snapshots on Arweave, not voxels.com.
Right. Yeah. Sam, the founder of Arweave, made this script. He's really passionate about this kind of use case, but they're just uploading all the metadata about every parcel, which also contains like the voxel information. But this is a really voxified parcel. Like we don't really have that, and that requires developer hours to get right. And that's also where we need some funding and alignment with our supporters. I want to find a way to glorify everybody that's supported us so far. And art's is the best idea I've came up with so far.
I like the idea of using this art style of archiving someone else's architecture work and moments that we kind of all enjoyed together via these events or just via perusing these parcels, and kind of providing an NFT for other projects too. So imagine Lexicon Devils being able to have this particular moment in their architecture captured via this artwork, and then they use it in their treasury, maybe sell it as an NFT reward, and then route maybe some of the proceeds in their treasury back to Openvoxels to kind of recognize the origin of the idea. But your work starts to help fundraise someone else who's architecting, which then feeds back into the treasury, and then maybe other people who are also architecting in this fashion can make use of that model. So somewhat generalizing it from just a fundraising mechanism from Openvoxels to actually celebrating what others are building. There could be something interesting there. I also think it'd be interesting to kind of capture some, like you said, you were starting with your own parcels for kind of these gifts. And if you were just to sell that one on the Openvoxels treasury, what if like the person who bought that one could then specify for the next funding cycle which parcel that you're going to generate a prototype for in this gift format, and then that one's on display during the funding cycle, and people can buy that one, and whoever buys that one after the following subsequent cycle can kind of propose their architecture. So you kind of are buying someone, or you're buying the work for the right to have your piece, your architecture memorialized in that format for a period of time. There's a lot you can do because there's so much artistry going on from the architecture all the way through to the gift making.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I like the idea. It's kind of like a curation game to kind of make it into the next season in a way. And maybe, we're starting out with some simple renders or looping animations, but eventually it can expand into more cinematic type stuff or virtual worlds or something. Kind of like reserving your spots in a virtual async art type of thing where you get your layer. And I was just thinking, I could probably do some other scanning techniques, like this Juicebox thing has a lot of detail. Maybe we could, try photogrammetry or NERF, with this parcel. Because if I just try to get the cubes, it wouldn't do it justice with all this custom box work. But that's a good idea. I mean, it would kind of make the art more generic than if maybe it's like a reservation type of thing. But I don't know. I like showing what it can be.
I really like Django's idea of encourage. I mean, I see two things. I guess the question is Openvoxels the right place to be almost a publisher where it can grab people's attention and be a good place for people to discover artworks of this type, these partnerships with artists, where people can purchase a 3D artwork based on a detailed snapshot of their parcel or a parcel that they love?
I don't think so. It's kind of niche.
Right, it's kind of niche. Maybe the artists themselves have better distribution.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so then maybe it does make sense to, rather than being like a publisher, rather just partner with artists to do some of the legwork to give them the assets that they can then create derivative works based on, and they become the ones who are selling those services and cutting Openvoxels in for, I don't know, 15%, 25%, something.
Yeah, that sounds good.
The one thing I really want to ask is,
yeah,
I think the challenge with this project will be it's a niche audience, and you have to make sure that you're selling things that people in the niche really want, rather than things that attempt to sell to a wider audience who outside of the niche maybe don't care as much, and maybe miss the mark with you really want to nail people who are obsessed with whichever metaverse they prefer, and then creating something that those people can't get enough of because it's homage or honors the hundreds of hours that they spend creating the stuff or that they spend perusing the spaces. So yeah, I think I would just make sure to focus on things that those people are, when you tell them the idea, are super jazzed about.
Cool. What about y'all? We're at this Juicebox HQ. What would you want to kind of do with this? parcel. If let's say we're a supporter, I want to make it more metaversey or something, or collab.
I know Wacko puts a lot of love into his architectures. So he built this parcel, probably in collaborations with others, but he's a mastermind here. And I am, if someone came along and helped him celebrate his work, because he's not going to celebrate his own work, but if someone came along and helped celebrate his work via these derivative arts based on the architecture, I think he would be the first customer, and then anyone who's close to him or who has been and cherished, like that moment in time, would as well. And I remember, like, even during forming this past month, there was a moment during the concert that things entered chaos mode, and they flicked a switch, and then the everything in the parcel started to burn down a little bit. And it's currently, if you go up to the venue, it's still burning down. And it's hard, you can't revert back to how it was in the beginning of the show. So then you can kind of create these moments during the show where the architecture is going to change, and it kind of gives us some reason to memorialize the in-between states. There could be something there, but I'm with Nicholas that the fanatics here are going to be first the architects, who are going to just spend countless hours building, but not really talking about their like how dope they are, obviously. And that's kind of the opportunity for the rest of us building the interoperability between these worlds and doing the archival process to really set these things in stone.
One little spin on that also is, I think, Wacko, I totally agree. And just walking around the space, it's like you look at the wall of NFT voxel NFTs of that I guess Wacko and others have created, or just I'm standing zoomed out, looking at the whole space with this awesome MTV inspired song camp rotating logo and the FIFA inspired soccer pitch. And he's
coffee
putting
shop is that cool too.
What's that?
No, it's an ice cream bar. Never mind.
It's all cool. And yeah, like Wacko is putting so much energy and love into this. And I think some people are appreciating it in the moment, but there's no way for us to sort of be supportive of Wacko's work directly. So one idea that occurs to me is, like, I would love to honor Wacko's, the heart and soul that he's putting into this, and other people at Lexicon, by contributing, like, maybe partially to some grander work that honors a snapshot of a moment in time of this space. So maybe if, like, everyone who appreciates Lexicon's work on this project could chip in a small piece. I'm thinking something like either they buy one of, I don't know, a limited edition NFT through Juicebox that is like almost like a thermometer. Like, once we get to 20 mints of this NFT, then we've reached the point where the archival snapshot artwork starts to take place, or something even like a party bid or something where everyone is like jumping in to support some more expensive NFT that honors a specific place. I think that could be a way to catalyze things like, I don't know, the Whip or other social collectives that really live in metaverse spaces. Maybe the individuals don't want to pay like a huge price, but maybe collectively they could do so. And especially because it's not so much to the pitch isn't, hey, support Openvoxels, we're archiving this stuff that you guys are working on, but instead it's honor the artists in your community who are creating your space by pitching into this, and we'll take a snapshot and do some artwork that really pays homage to that and is an honor to that, and also a snapshot that you can hang on to, because it seems like because the plots cost money, people spend time vamping and revamping the same space. So there's a natural reason why I want to like hang on to that, and especially why a whole community might want to hang on to that.
Yeah, well said. I really do think it's the architects first. Part of the original inspiration was to preserve works like artists who are no longer with us, such as Alada. Like, he left a lot of great works of art, and I want those to be preserved as part of like our history. And yeah, I really like it. It's like Juicebox V3 kind of feels like Kickstarter in a way, with how you mentioned the minting out to kind of stretch goals. A lot of cool experimental room to play around in.
Yeah, I could totally imagine a project like Openvoxels having a Juicebox project description that says, like, our goals are, if we hit 20 mints of this, I don't know, 0.1 ETH NFT, then we'll initiate the project. And then, yeah, stretch goals for subsequent mints, and maybe you set a cap on the total issuance supply for that NFT, or you don't, but you just really specify what the points at which something happens, and then the whole community and the architects then become like maybe salespeople is a bit vulgar way to put it, but they become proponents of, hey, we really want this snapshot to be taken in this moment in time because we're planning on changing everything, and we'd love to, or even retroactively, given that you've got all the snapshots from the Arweave stuff, that'd be cool.
It'd be very, very cool. And it's hard to get distribution of any of these things. It's hard to bring people to formings, and those who show up, I think a lot of folks in this room have showed up to one, and that first experience is always kind of stunning, of like, whoa, this is happening, but why haven't I heard about it? Or, it feels a little like clunky, but it's so beautifully clunky, and there's so much, like the path forward is so interesting here. And like, as we're starting to build distribution and people coming in slowly, like one event at a time, I think we can each do our part to contribute to that forward motion, but then also jump in around it, right? So how can we use that distribution channel to then like bring people towards the work that you're doing, or maybe musicians who want to do an after party or a pregame. I think there's a lot to do, which is with just sharing distribution channels instead of like working in our own silos trying to talk to people.
Yeah. Oh, that just gave me an idea. Like one goal could be, for example, with the snapshot, we create a VR chat world with it, and then like some subsequent stretch goals with that could be some added features on top where we really make it a gourmet experience, like some vehicles, some maybe get some professional like VR chat world builder help to make a sick nightclub in the middle of it that we host musicians at or something. And some of the goals could be attributed to kind of like voting on which platform that we bring the snapshot into to act as like a living museum. That can also kind of be really interesting.
Totally. And I wanted to give you props for locking the payouts in your funding cycle distribution to Mercury and M3 Factory. That's not a feature many people make use of, but it's very cool to see that. And I would say, I think probably introducing the spend claimed or unclaimed tokens to get something is a good mechanic, but probably for what we're just talking about, I think just get people to mint the NFTs, continue issuing the fungibles to them, and then down the road, maybe find something that people can spend those on. Or for instance, an idea that comes to mind is like something like a token curated registry or something where people who have made contributions in the past get to decide where you focus your attention, maybe which metaverse, maybe, something like, or which parcel or which kind of projects. But I would say don't overcomplicate the NFT sales thing, because really what you're trying to do is just generate ETH with something that's simple and easy to understand. And already it's such a niche thing that I think you don't want to overcomplicate too much. But I would definitely say keep issuing those fungibles. Don't turn it off, because who knows what they could be useful for in the future.
Totally agree.
Great advice. Yeah, I like the cycles and everything. I mean, Juicebox super underrated. Sometime this year I want to experiment with Overflow a bit, but this one is just the NFTs, and yeah, great work building all this, and really appreciate all the feedback.
Awesome. Thank you for coming through and talking about this. Also, one last note, if you have some specific idea, you can always create a new project with a specific mechanic, and then point, all or some of its revenues at Openvoxels, so you can start to do experiments with different kinds of NFTs simultaneously. But again, yeah, don't overcomplicate it. It's noisy enough out there. But that's awesome. Thanks, Jin, for coming through, and hope you come back and chat again. I think it's really important in these office hours that we not only talk once, but like continue talking as you try things and see what works and what doesn't, and soberly analyze and course correct. So hope you come back soon. So let's jump to Ibn Inglor. How's it going?
Hey, what's up, guys? It's going decent. Pretty busy day, but ready to talk about some ideas I just been having around this creator DAO.
Awesome. So do you want to just give a very quick intro to who you are and what you've been doing with DAO and NFT stuff thus far for people who aren't familiar with your work?
For sure. So my name is Ibn Inglor. I'm a recording artist from the far south side of Chicago, a place called Algill Gardens. I've been making music professionally since 2013, and like before Web3, I garnered the attention of like a lot of like notable like publications like Complex Mag, Fader, noisy, that whole thing. So jumping into Web3 was like super scary to me. At first, I was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. When I first started, I want to say it was May of last year, something like that. And once I really seen that, like, what type of community and environment that, like, this place was and what was going on here, I fell deeply in love with it and been like real banging my head against the wall, just trying to figure out like what are ways that artists can really like benefit from this technology and like, just using it per se. So the DAO itself was birthed out of a successful crowdfund that I did on Mirror. I had raised 20 ETH to put out to finish working on my album and finishing up and doing all that good stuff. And we actually did that and successfully dropped it on Sound. All the songs sold out. And now I'm at the stage where I'm really trying to just build out the structure and I guess framework of the DAO itself and start to provide value for the members that's in it and members that will join later down the line. Some ideas that I had was, so when I launched the crowdfund, a certain like supply of tokens was like deployed to the contributors, and what I was thinking about doing with Juicebox was starting like another token where I give the same token supply to the backers from the crowdfund, and then also retroactively give like old collectors that was collecting like way back, when I first started, like their tokens, and starting to, I think, using the token as the utility versus per NFT is what I think would be more beneficial for artists in this space to really figure out who actually like rocks with them, who fucks with them, who actually like super duper supports them. So it's like once you get like X amount of tokens, then that's when like certain utility starts to come into play and all that good stuff. So,
hey, Evan, can you remind us what the mission of the DAO is?
So it is to, and I have just finished my mission statement because I want the DAO to be bigger than just me and just one artist. I wanted to create a DAO to be exactly what it is, just for bigger, widespread of creators. But it's to empower creators like across all mediums. I'm just going to give you guys like my mission statement. Go ahead.
Sure, hit it.
Empowering creators of all mediums by providing a decentralized and autonomous platform where they can collaborate, share resources, and promote their work. By participating in the DAO, members can directly support their favorite artists and contribute to their early success. Join us in pushing the creator economy forward and promoting artist autonomy.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you want to fundraise and pull funds together, and then have some form of decision-making format, some governance format, for figuring out how to then prioritize those funds into different projects over time.
Yes. Yep. And doing it in a way that like makes like the most sense per se. So I know a lot of talk like in the music and NFT spaces about like royalties and collectors possibly getting like a cut of an artist like masters of publishing. And honestly, I don't totally agree with that. I feel like that's the recording, that's our holy grail. So I think the idea that I had was once you break through like having, let's say, $10,000 to $100,000, like not $10,000 to $100,000, 10 to 100,000 tokens, you can then attend a writing camp that'll be sponsored by the Treasury and actually come and participate in the creative process and actually get credited in the way that anybody else would working on a project.
So are you trying to create something that's a resource for many musicians, or is really a hub for your fans directly?
Many musicians. So it started out with the idea of me just creating something around just me, and I felt like that wasn't like, I don't know, that's just not like how I envision like a creator DAO actually being. I see it being like a full on, like, basically I would, for lack of better words, I would call it an agency, where it's like, the DAO has so many artists as a part of it, and each artist that comes into the DAO, we help them utilize tools in the space. So the DAO would have particular tools that we use, like Coinvice, Mirror, Juicebox, all these different tools, and we help the creators build their communities and collector base and all that good stuff.
Okay, so something like a seed club focused on musicians.
Yep.
It's sounding to me similar, or like it could maybe get some inspiration from Kenny's Studio DAO project. Kenny's in the audience here, but I'll do a quick recap of that model, that just so we can put it in our heads and tuck it away. Maybe it's useful, maybe it's not. But there's like a base treasury, like the green light treasury, and the point of the treasury is to then green light indie films. So as funds accumulate in this base treasury, folks vote on which indie films to fund, and the films themselves are actually Juicebox treasuries in their own right. So you have, let's say, an artist that wants to be a part of this collective, deploy their Juicebox project, and then have NFTs on display. It can be music, it can be videos, it can be like art, and then there's some relationship, like financial relationship, between funds that accumulate to that indie artist. So maybe like 10% of those funds go back into the Greenlight Treasury, and then those can then be recycled into future projects, right? So we kind of create a network of Juicebox treasuries as opposed to just one Juicebox treasury that's meant to support a project that's actually meant to grow way past kind of what's initially like tangible, right? Because you want it to be a lot bigger than yourself.
Yeah. So that actually sounds like, the same idea that I've been kind of like building out. So that's actually cool that that they're doing that, because I've seen Studio DAO. Actually, Nicholas put me onto Studio DAO, so I just didn't look into too deep into everything that they've been doing as far as on Juicebox, but that's super cool.
I definitely suggest there's a blog post describing Studio DAO's setup, and there's also a great podcast episode, and you can find both on info.juicebox.money. There's like a blog section, and there are blog posts. You can just search the site to find, if you search Studio DAO on info.juicebox.money, and it describes really what their approach is. And there's also a great podcast interview with Kenny describing how they're going about it. But Jango, is the main advice here, like maybe consider doing specific projects for specific artists, or finding some way to break it out into multiple projects?
Well, it sounds like me like everyone who is interested in being a part of the collective both wants to A, be a part of the group, but also B, have their own autonomy, their own identity, right? And so you kind of have to balance these two tensions. And I think initially we would definitely leverage the collective a little bit more. And I think another thing that we could do here in the next couple of weeks, maybe a month, the NFTs on Juicebox will be able to be distributable in audio format or video format. And I think as that tech work on the website gets finished, we'll obviously want to promote it and talk about it and share about it. And if we had a few examples of treasuries that are looking to fundraise using distribution of those types of content, then we can kind of use each other and our distribution channels to actually see if we can actually get people interacting with these tools, so we can learn more and then make these things sturdy so that others can then come in later and make use of them. So maybe that's a cool way that we could work together for the next few months to start kind of the base treasury, right? Like in the Studio DAO's case, the green light treasury. Maybe there's a better metaphor for music here that we could use, but that comes to mind too.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, where have you found success selling NFTs or in the Mirror crowdfund? I'm curious. I think it might be useful to narrow down a little bit who are the people most likely to generate revenue for you, because it may not be the exact same audience that listens to the music, maybe overlap, but maybe not. So in the Mirror crowdfund, for instance, I know it was a more exuberant time, but do you have a sense of who the people were who supported you and how many of them stayed in touch, or could you be doing more to understand those people better?
So yeah, pretty much it's only a select few from the crowdfund that actually continue after the crowdfund that still collected and stuff like that. But everyone that was a part of the crowdfund, I do have personal relationships with. I talked to all of them one-on-one before they even contributed to the crowdfund. I see it's a lot of different platforms out right now, like Sound, Catalog, a lot of different ones that's the hub for music NFTs that artists are collecting on. But I personally feel like the artist should be the platform, and it should be a direct to DTC type of model, where it's like, hey, you go to my website versus going to the third party and mint my NFTs, or you come to you come to, yeah, you just do strictly with me, I do strictly with you, and we do it like that, and we build it out in a way that, like, it's a lot more personable, but not to take away from like what these platforms are doing for artists, because they are providing, like a collective base or a collective community. So I don't know if that fully answers the question.
Yeah, that is so powerful. Like maybe part of it is, rather than, because I understand this, and I've heard this from other musicians too, who have expressed to me that they're maybe not comfortable with, of course, giving the power to the platforms, which is reminiscent of the relationships in Web 2, but also maybe some of the like engagement mechanics that some of these platforms have are don't feel appropriate, like an appropriate context for selling their music. But at the same time, if there is a collector base, that is kind of the, it's like, what, even in the visual art world, I know it a little bit better, but like Foundation or Super Rare, in an era of post manifold contracts, you don't need those places because of the ability to mint NFTs. But why people keep going back is because they have collectors. So maybe there's also a possibility to have a hybrid of maybe selling NFTs on some of those platforms because they give you distribution and access to a collector base that's willing to spend, but then pointing some of those revenues or all of the revenues at a Juicebox or some other kind of community treasury where maybe you're paying yourself something, but the funds are also supporting a bigger mission. So you get access to the collectors, but the funds are ultimately going somewhere where you're building some momentum of your own independent of them.
Exactly. Like, and I don't like, because pretty much all the platforms is distribution. So it's like, I definitely like, and I would, I'm using all of the tools that's available. Like I would still drop on Sound along with like just dropping on my own website. But it's the biggest challenges in the scene right now is, if you're only dropping on the platforms, some of those collectors don't really roll over to, coming to your personal website because they just like collecting off the platforms. So that like barrier right there is kind of like one of the main things that's happening, where it's like it's weird because it's like I wouldn't have the same amount of collectors going to my website that I would if I dropped on Sound. So it's like, how do artists in this space kind of like start making themselves just the brand itself and making themselves the distributor and stuff like that. So that's why I like the idea of like just a collective of artists. We could start. We'll definitely be starting small. It'll just be myself. One of my other good friends, that's an artist. He's in the audience. Aaron Sam, that'll be a part of it starting out. But it's just figuring out like using tools in the space to build that solid community of that core fan, and seeing if that, and using that as a use case to further like, bring other artists on board and let them know like, okay, hey, this is how we're doing it. These are the tools that you will use. We'll show you how to use them, and we'll help you build your community, and then just send you off to the wolves and you take care of everything yourself after that.
I spoke with Sherry from Water and Music at DevCon, and we had a conversation, and I don't want to represent her perspective, but I think we kind of agreed that maybe long-term, like selling the music as NFTs is not really what makes the most sense. I certainly think this from the perspective that you really want the music to be out there. You want people listening to the music in their car or wherever it is that they enjoy music. And you don't want to be restricting access to that. So I'm very skeptical of any kind of token gating of access to the content that is the thing that is your art practice, whether you're a musician or any other field. And I also sometimes think about like what, I had a conversation also with Matthew Chaim from Songcamp a few weeks ago, and we were talking about tickets and the idea. He was telling me about ideas about tickets, which inspired this whole series of thoughts of my own about voting tokens and other kinds of, like, basically what you want to establish is some kind of recurring revenue. You want people to have a reason to buy something, and you want them to have a reason to come back and buy something else later, because otherwise you're only making these one-time sales, and then it's not so good. So I think right now the Sound XYZ stuff seems to be working. Musicians are selling there. Part of me says, hey, if you can make ETH selling music right now, do it and have that feed something else, because I mean, that's great. The people are willing to buy anywhere is awesome, given the size of the collector base. Just in general, there's like something on the order of 100,000 people collecting NFTs on Ethereum, a smaller slice of that collecting music NFTs. It's not a particularly successful speculative NFT asset. There's not an insane secondary market on these things. Maybe there's some secondary market on things like Snoop Dogg NFTs, but it's pretty limited. So you don't get all the benefit of the speculation potential that, say, PFP collections have had over the last 2 years. So if there is a place where people are selling, go for it. But I do sometimes wonder, like, what would Jimi Hendrix drop as an NFT? And I'm not convinced it would be a song. But if someone who is whoever in your mind is a real artist, I think they're going to have some real concept around why this object that you're going to keep in your wallet for the rest of time, that's going to keep its integrity over time, is some kind of memorabilia that people really imbue with emotion. And so I think there's also potential to think about what kinds of experiences people can be offered that are really emotionally visceral, and then have an NFT attached to that rather than just directly attached to the song. That's it. I think if you can make money selling songs, I say go for it, because it's a tough market right now. And if there is a place where people are doing buying those things, then I say go for it. But I wonder, talking about this collective, I think maybe if there's some way to sharpen why a buyer would want to be specifically involved in this, and why they would want to support the effort, or if it makes more sense to sell them something that indirectly supports your experimentation around some kind of collective. But I think probably figuring out pretty clearly why buyers are going to be really willing to spend is going to be helpful for ensuring the longevity of the project. So it's good that you're in touch with all the original collectors and have personal relationships, because those are obviously the most qualified leads for making subsequent sales. But I think maybe understanding a little bit their psychology of why they participated in the first place, or why they continue to participate, and trying to not serve exactly what their mental model is, but understand them as the people who are most likely to purchase your next thing, and grow from there. So does this resonate with them? The idea of having some kind of artist collective, I think maybe it could be a little sharper in terms of why now, why this, why other artists are going to care about it. And maybe you don't have to follow this, obviously, but maybe nailing tokenomics for yourself gives you the authority to say, I'm going to go make a collective that gives advice to other people, other artists, musicians, about how they should do their tokenomics. And I think, I don't know, I don't follow it all, but I think nobody in music so far has totally figured out perfect tokenomics. So maybe, I don't know, focusing on your own practice, or somehow establishing the domain expertise to be the person, or the small handful of people who are the ones giving that advice, might give more ammunition and more weight when you do try and make that pitch for we're building a collective.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's actually like something me and my other teammate had actually talked about earlier today, because we were going through all of these different scenarios, just exactly about what you just said. I think like the main reason that a lot of collectors collect music NFTs right now, I'm pretty sure some of you already heard it already, but it is to be like, hey, I was here to support this artist when they first started. I was one of the first supporters, and then the artist also recognizing those people as like their first supporters, or their first like diehard fans. And I think it's a thin line between like that also, where it's like, a lot of people that do collect some of these things or do support isn't actually like music listeners, or they just participate in a collective because they like you or they fuck with you, but they're not actually the listeners that's going to be going to Spotify and listening to your song 10-20 times a day or some shit like that. So I definitely agree with everything you just said. So that kind of put it in a better perspective for me.
Hey, Eamon, do you ever perform?
Yes. Yep.
So what's your performance cadence, and how do you manage your time?
What do you, I don't know if I'm fully
like, yeah. So do you do like shows often? And how do you decide like which venues to play at and for which audiences?
Gotcha. So I like all this year and all last year, I did a ton of performances. Me personally, when I throw my own shows, I was a part of a lot of shows as far as like Zootopia. I did East Denver, and I also did South by Southwest. So every show that I've done has always been like a hip hop show and like a alternative like type of show, where there's a lot of different artists collectively that's performing and shit like that. But with me personally, when I choose to throw my own show, which is something I did already back in 2016, I'm very particular about like how that is put together, and the venue that, I go, I'm really a stickler about like, the sound system and all that good stuff. But each audience my audience per se is very like alternative. It's not strictly hip hop, boom bap. It's more so like, the FK Twigs or the James Blakes, the artistry is a little different than just what you would normally get. So I hope that kind of answers it. But I was going to jump into something else, because that's like another thing where I see the treasury, like, so this is the idea I had about like the treasury and stuff like that. So when funds go into the treasury, and to a certain point, it's like, okay, I want to do a proposal where like, hey, I want to pull out funds so I can do a music video off of it. And if it gets approved, then X amount of percentage goes back into X amount of percentages from the royalties of the YouTube video goes back into the treasury, and so forth and so on. So stuff like that I've been thinking about.
Okay, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was just thinking about how maybe to leverage a community treasury to propose certain events, and then bring people together to give space to new artists. It's as well as like very much curate it in your own way. Could be a reason that motivates people to contribute to your treasury, and then it's just a bonus that they get a song or get whatever whatever piece of content you have on display. So instead of like the reason to buy the song is for the song itself, that's just a memory, a piece of content that sits in your wallet that reflects the intent to support whatever the money is being spent on.
Fact. Yeah. So for example, like everyone that contributed to the crowdfund, they get a free ticket to like the DangerZone like headline show that we'll be throwing. They get to come to the experience where I am showcasing this album that you guys participated in helping, us finish and wrap up and stuff like that. So that's definitely down the line. And I talked to someone else about that too, because I talked about what pretty much exactly what we're talking about now, like what collectors actually want. And I feel like creating those experiences and being a world builder in that way, in that kind of way, kind of really helps the support system become like a lot more genuine, I guess I would say. So it's like, creating experiences that they would want to come to and they would want to be a part of and actually feel like, wow, I was, I helped this come to life. I helped this artist get his vision out. And I'm happy to be like in direct contact with him. I'm happy to be chopping it up with him and understanding him as a person outside of just the artistry. So yeah, so it's a lot of,
it also let you kind of like, if you're doing like a treasury just for an event, for instance, you can then have like 3 different songs, like 3 different NFT tiers. And it doesn't really, you don't necessarily have to value the songs differently, but you can just have 3 levels of support. Like one of them is, let's say 10 right, for like sponsors or something. And then the other, like the smallest one is 0.01. So that anyone can contribute at different sponsorship levels, and they each get a song or a piece of content. So you don't have to like think about the value of a song as much. You're just using the content for like a momentary inspiration to get people on board.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, okay. Thank you. Because man, when I tell you, I've been like just buried in just thoughts and figuring out ways, because, and I'm not trying to make it like overly complicated, but just something that's like sustainable, honestly. So I want the 100 fan theory where, if I have 100 true fans that's willing to buy whatever the case may be, merge, NFTs, just singles off of iTunes or whatever the case, like that's what I'm really going for right now, and just really building that out. And I do like I agree with the suggestion on just like starting with me first, and because I've already proven myself to be some type of use case in this space, so it's just kind of furthering developing that.
Awesome. Guys, I have to run to prior obligation, but Django's going to keep the space going. And thank you, Ibn, for coming through. And I hope you keep talking about this. Thank you, Jin, also. And I'll be back next week. Also, before I go, I wanted to remind everyone, if you aren't yet and you're interested in keeping up with what's new for Juicebox protocol and cool new projects that might be influences or interesting representing interesting models for your project, you can sign up at newsletter.juicebox.money to a weekly newsletter that recaps all the most interesting things going on in the protocol. And there's so much that it barely fits into one newsletter. So newsletter.juicebox.money if you're interested. And I personally will see you next week. Jango, take it away.
Thank you, Nicholas. Awesome session. If anybody who has been in the audience and wants to share, I see DoDAO as a speaker. I think you were in the Discord earlier today asking about some token dynamics. If you want to step up and maybe remind me what your project is, what the intention is, and what you're thinking with regards to tokens.
Yeah, thanks, Jango. So we don't have any token right now, and basically because of like regulation, unclarity, and all, we don't want to do crowdfunding. So we are an education platform. So we help different Web3 projects create like educational sites on our platform. Plus, we also do the content and all for like the educational sites also. So the way we want to form like our DAO, so we have a few members already working in the project, but we want to expand it now. Basically, the intent was first to have everything working, and now to expand it to the community so that anybody can participate on the tokens. So to make sure like we are not we comply with the regulation and all, we want to have the tokens non-transferable. So based on the work that is done by the members, all the members, we could reward the tokens, right, which could be based on the task or something like that, or like based on the levels we could also give NFTs, right? So maybe I'll take just tokens for now, and because of the type of work we do get some grants and all also, right? So suppose we worked like there are 7 or 10 members who worked on something, right? And we just say that, okay, which member worked on how much time and like with what complexity or something like that, based on the cards and all, we calculate that. Now, at another project, we have a treasury that is built up. Now we want to give it. So basically, this is the inverse of what Juicebox does, right? So the inverse is like maybe in Juicebox, we are giving the project tokens instead of like maybe USDC or like could be ETH or any other token. But what we want to do is we want to give USDC or like some other stable coin. And we want the users to redeem like the project tokens, right? And we could use an inverse bonding curve for that. Means the users who redeem earlier, right, they get less number of tokens, and the users who redeem later, they get more tokens, right? So that will help in making sure like every user, like every member, like just gives opportunity to other also to redeem the token also, right? So in that case, the treasury, we could make sure that everybody gets some part of the treasury, like whatever that is.
I'll start with the first bit, with the non-transferability bit, just to clarify some of the levers that can be accessed via the Juicebox protocol. So there's project tokens that get issued out when Ethereum enters the treasury. I'm just going to go over the basics to remind folks. There's project tokens that get issued when ETH enters the treasury. If the ETH coming in passes certain thresholds that you specify, then that they can also get NFTs. And projects work on a per funding cycle basis. So you set rules and funding cycles that have durations, and then you can change those rules only in future funding cycles. So they're kind of locked the time being. By default, all of these tokens, the project tokens and the NFTs, are transferable. And by default, the project tokens are not ERC20s. So you have to explicitly issue ERC20s once the project was created to have project tokens then be claimable into ERC20s. And you can specify for any funding cycle whether or not the project tokens are transferable or the NFTs are transferable. So the project tokens can be either transferable or not transferable for a funding cycle, and so can your NFTs. So to answer the transferability thing, you could set it so that your project tokens are not transferable, and make it so that in the future, given certain governance decisions, kind of a governing body that's not just yourself decides, hey, we actually do want tokens to now be transferable, they'll have the ability to do so. If you want to lock in place the non-transferability, you can also bring your own token. It's a little bit more complex, but it's still possible. So that's like your transferability option. So if you're just trying to make sure things aren't transferable, a good starting point is to leave the ERC20s off for now, and then just make things not transferable on a per funding cycle basis. I think the website doesn't give you that toggle yet, but that'd be an easy thing to add if someone needs it, if you need it. So keep us posted there. As far as the bonding curve dynamic, I think I understood, but to be honest, I think there's a little bit of like, I would ask for you to reiterate it. I think just kind of my I'm curious if that's a mechanism that was designed by the community as a whole, or if there's a few people who are more interested in then designing like a more perfect tokenomic structure came up with that. Because I feel as though you may start to miss some understanding from a lot of people in the community. And given it's an education project, I think the project may benefit from something a little bit more straightforward and simple. How did you guys come up with that? Just curious.
We just discuss internally, like what is the simplest model we can start with, right? So do it in phases. So this first phase could be like, now we want the people to be able to redeem the tokens, right? Like the project tokens which we give, we want them to redeem it for like USDC, like the stable coins, whatever we get, right? Or like whatever becomes as part of the treasury, like maybe it'll. Now, what is the best way so that every member is able to redeem some part of it? And so either we just give either we have to apply some logic so that it's distributed based on the portion they have done, or it could be like if we follow a bonding curve, we say like the members who like inverse bonding curve, right? Like maybe the members who are redeeming it early, they get lesser number of tokens as compared to the members who are redeeming later. So the way it is so people would redeem a bit later, and we'll give everybody opportunity to redeem a bit earlier.
Was the fundraising in USDC only, or is ETH also being used here?
We could use ETH also. Yeah, we could use ETH also.
So if we were to fundraise in ETH and issue project tokens out, is there still a USDC in this equation? Like, does that come in somewhere, or am I missing something?
No, like USDC, it's just like an easier conversion because so far like all the payments and all we've been handling is in stable coins.
I see.
But we want people to be able to redeem the project token, right? Like maybe what we do it in Juicebox.
Yep. So in Juicebox currently, funds come in ETH, and we have the ability to do stable coins, but we don't really have a website for that yet. So I'm going to use examples in ETH. So as ETH comes into the treasury, project tokens go out, and if there's no distribution from the treasury scheduled and the redemption rate is turned on, then you can redeem your project tokens and get a refund, right? At a 100% bonding curve, right? Which means there's no advantage to redeeming sooner rather than later. So that's kind of the basic function, right? ETH is in the treasury, tokens go out, tokens get burned or redeemed, and the ETH goes back out to the token holders. And then if you add a bonding curve, then once you go to redeem your project tokens, you only get some of your funds back. The rest is left to share by those that continue to hold your tokens, right? So it incentivizes longer term holders. So with this in mind, what's the thing that you want to add on top of this? Or what's the difference that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, the only difference is we want to inverse it, right? Means if you redeem, like, so we mint out, we give the ETH tokens, but you return us the project tokens which we burn. So basically you're explaining the refund, right? So maybe we just use the refund cycle for that.
So do you already have ETH or USDC in your treasury? Is that correct?
Yeah. So we already got you. We would want to give like the project tokens to the members.
Gotcha.
And after a phase, we say like suppose our treasury is like $20,000, right? And now we want to work as a team all together. We don't know how much work is there. Everybody works together, right? And based on the amount of work they have done, everybody gets tokens, right? Now, after the phase is done, we say like whoever wants to redeem their token and all, This is the treasury. If you use a bonding curve, the benefit is maybe some part of the treasury is left and people don't claim all the tokens, right?
I understand.
That could be added for the later phase to build up the treasury and incentivize the token holders even further. But
I understand. Yeah.
We pay everyone based on the percentage of tokens that they have. So it's just the inverse of that.
Totally. And I think how you would pull this off with the Juicebox treasury is you would create a blank project. And then at the first funding cycle, you can turn on a flag that allows the project owner to mint tokens on demand. So you can then mint project tokens out and then distribute them to whoever fulfills the tasks or however you see fit. And then with your treasury funds, you can then inject the treasury funds into your treasury. So there's two ways to get funds into your treasury. Either people can pay into the treasury, which will then cause the project tokens to be minted outwards if you have like an issuance rate, or you can just inject the funds into the treasury and bypass the token minting. And then anyone can just inject funds into the treasury. So what you'd want to do is mint the project tokens and distribute them out, and then inject the funds that you want to have claimable. And then folks will then just be able to burn those project tokens to access funds from the treasury. And if you want, then at the end of a time period, if you wish, then you can distribute whatever's left back into your operating budget. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. Cool. I think this is good enough. I was just thinking that maybe we can add NFTs and all also in the other way, but I think this already solves the thing that we're trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you already have treasury funds and you just want to make it available to an already existing community. And this is a really cool use case of Juicebox. Mostly folks are thinking about how to fundraise instead of how to redistribute funds that have already been raised back to a community. So the NFT aspect, it's probably meant more for how do we figure out how to pull more money in. And it sounds like that's not the most pressing problem for you. So I definitely recommend coming back when that is more kind of the next need. And then it'd be nice to understand your project more and figure out how to fold an NFT schema into your regular operations to make things more sustainable. But I love the idea of sharing whatever funds have accumulated back with your community. That's definitely the way to go.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I've been talking to a few DAOs, just to understand, and I think one of the concerns many of the projects have is should they make it, because a lot of the projects that are starting, they don't want to take the risk of getting the money in and all. They want to develop something, but at the same time they want to reward the community, right?
Absolutely.
It's one of the common things to not make it transferable. At the same time, some of these projects have their own fund, or somehow they're able to collect the funds and they want to give it to the community also. So I see a couple of projects who are trying to do something what I'm trying to do with this thinking that maybe Juicebox would be able to automate that, as you mentioned.
Yep, perfect. And I think on our end, what we can do to help is just make that non-transferability during a funding cycle available in the UI, so you can just toggle that on when you launch your project. That once you distribute your project tokens out, they can't be traded. They can only be redeemed optionally by whoever you distributed it to. So that's something that we owe you. So follow up in the Discord and we'll make sure it happens.
Sure. Thanks, Jango. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. All right, everybody. I think we are about an hour and 20 minutes into this thing. I'm going to log off as well, and we'll continue on part 3 next week. If you have any questions, jump into the Juicebox Discord meanwhile, and visit the treasury page for this Spaces NFT Tokenomics, which we're experimenting with some NFT distributions there. And there's a lot of cool projects happening in the Juicebox ecosystem, and it's exciting to see a few potential new ones emerging. And it's nice to kind of provide these generic tools on the Juicebox sites and protocols for people to start building projects with. And it's awesome to see folks like Ibn consider, hey, as we grow, we actually do want to create our own platforms and not start fresh. We want to kind of leverage and build on top of what we already had going. And that's definitely what we're about here as well. So feel free to use the tools to get started. Super easy. And then as you find developing resources or want to move over to your website or have more complex needs, feel free to just port the tools over to serve them from your platforms. That's why we're all here doing Web3 stuff, so that folks have the freedom to build and access content and tools and money as they see fit. And yeah, this was an awesome session. Happy experimenting, everybody.